Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had an emitter quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built on equality. That was a lesson Izuku Midoriya learned at the tender age of 4, and it was a lesson that had been reinforced every single day for the subsequent 10 years. It was etched into the burnt pages of his notebooks, bruised into his skin, and whispered in the pitying glances of his mother. Humanity had evolved. The paranormal had become the normal. Dreams were no longer abstract concepts of the future. They were tangible, physical abilities called quirks. 80% of the population possessed some uncanny ability, ranging from the mundane ability to slightly elongate one's fingers to the catastrophic power to control the weather. And then, there was the remaining 20%. The leftovers. The evolutionary cul-de-sacs. The quirkless. Izuku sat at his desk at Aldera Junior High, his posture hunched, trying to make himself occupy as little volume in the universe as possible. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, motes that seemed to have more purpose and direction than he did. So, the teacher's voice droned, lacking any real enthusiasm. As third-year students, it's time to start thinking seriously about your futures and what you want to do with your lives. He held up a stack of printouts, the paper crisp and white. I could pass out these career aptitude tests, but... He paused, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He threw the papers into the air, letting them rain down like confetti. Why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero track. The classroom exploded. It was a cacophony of cheers and the activation of quirks. Hands turned into rocks, eyes extended on stalks, and telekinetic waves rattled the windows. It was a display of individuality, of power, of potential. Izuku kept his head down, his hand trembling slightly as he gripped his pen. Don't look up. Don't make eye contact. Just exist until the bell rings. Yes, you've all got wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving a hand lazily to settle the class. But remember, using your powers in school is against regulations. Hey, teach! The voice cut through the noise like a jagged knife. It was arrogant, rough, and undeniably commanding. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, his feet resting on his desk, looking at his classmates with distinct boredom. Don't lump me in with these extras, Bakugo scoffed, a grin splitting his face. Comparing me to this bunch of losers is an insult. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm the real deal. The class erupted in angry protests. That's uncalled for, Katsuki. Yeah, shut up, extras. Bakugo barked back, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with the stuff for UA High. I'm going to surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be etched in the history books. Oh, that's right, the teacher mused, looking at his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA. The murmurs of the class shifted from anger to awe. UA was the pinnacle. It was the Olympus of heroics. The acceptance rate was abysmal. The entrance exam was a nightmare. And the teacher continued, his eyes sliding over the roster until they landed on a specific name. His tone shifted, becoming almost amused. Midoriya, didn't you put UA as your first choice too? The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't the silence of respect. It was the vacuum that precedes a shockwave. Izuku flinched. He felt the gazes of 20 students bore into the back of his head. He tried to shrink further, but physics wouldn't allow it. Huh! Bakugo was the first to react, but the rest of the class followed instantly, erupting into laughter. It wasn't friendly laughter. It was the laughter of people who had just heard a dog claim it could fly a plane. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. They got rid of that rule, sure, but there's no precedent. He's quirkless. What's he gonna do, annoy the villains to death? Izuku stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face burned. There's no rule against it. He stammered, his voice wavering. They got rid of the restriction years ago. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean he can't. Boom. Izuku didn't even see Bakugo move. 1 second, the blonde was at his desk. The next, he was in front of Izuku, slamming a hand onto Izuku's desk. The force of the explosion blew Izuku backward, knocking him off his feet and onto the hard linoleum floor. Smoke drifted up from the scorched surface of the desk. Bakugo loomed over him, his eyes glowing with a predatory mix of rage and incredulity. "Hey, Deku!" Bakugo growled. "You're below the rejects. You're quirkless. You're nothing. And you think you can stand in the same ring as me?" Izuku scuttled backward until his back hit the chalkboard. "Wait, Kaken. I'm not trying to compete with you. I swear." He held his hands up in a placating gesture. It's been my dream since I was little. And well, I won't know unless I try." "Try?" Bakugo shouted, smoke curling from his palms. "Try what? The entrance exam? You're going to take the exam just to die. What can you do? You're a pebble. A useless, quirkless pebble." The class watched, snickering. This was the natural order. The strong preyed on the weak. The gifted ruled the ungifted. It was the law of the jungle, dressed up in school uniforms. The rest of the day passed in a blur of humiliation. Izuku moved through the halls like a ghost, avoiding gazes, just waiting for the release of the final bell. When it finally rang, he exhaled a breath he felt he'd been holding for 6 hours. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13, and stared at the cover. This was his treasure, his coping mechanism. If he couldn't have power, he would understand it. He would know every hero, every quirk, every strategy. "We're not done talking, Deku." Izuku froze. Bakugo stood by the door, flanked by his 2 lackeys. Before Izuku could react, Bakugo snatched the notebook from his hands. "Ah," Bakugo sneered, reading the title. "Hero Analysis for the Future? Seriously? You're still doing this crap? Give it back, Kaken!" Izuku stood up, reaching for the book. Bakugo smirked. He held the notebook between his palms. Clap! A sharp explosion detonated between his hands. The force scorched the cover, leaving it black and smoking. "No!" Izuku gasped. Bakugo tossed the ruined book out the open window. Izuku rushed to the sill, watching helplessly as his hard work plummeted toward the koi pond below. "You know," Bakugo said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing calm. He walked up to Izuku, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Most top-tier heroes have stories about their school days. I want the shine of being the only student from this dump to make it to UA. I'm a perfectionist." His fingers dug into Izuku's shoulder. The fabric of Izuku's uniform began to smoke. "So," Bakugo whispered, leaning in close. "Don't even apply, nerd." Izuku trembled. He couldn't speak. His throat felt like it was closed by a vice. He wanted to scream, to hit back, to do something, but 10 years of conditioning held him in place. Quirkless. Useless. "Deku." Bakugo pulled away, satisfied with the fear in Izuku's eyes. He turned to leave, his lackeys chuckling behind him. "Geez, he can't even say anything back," one of them laughed. "Path of the least resistance," the other mocked. As they reached the door, Bakugo stopped. He glanced back over his shoulder, his red eyes cold. "You know, if you want to be a hero that badly, there might be another way." Izuku looked up, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. "Pray that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life," Bakugo said, a cruel grin stretching across his face, "and take a swan dive off the roof of the building." The world stopped. For Izuku, the noise of the school, the chirping of the cicadas outside, the beating of his own heart, it all vanished. "Kill yourself?" That was what Kaken had said. Izuku stood there, frozen. Rage, hot and unfamiliar, began to bubble up in his chest. It wasn't the usual sadness. It wasn't the resignation. It was pure, unadulterated anger. He turned around sharply, his fists clenching at his sides, ready to shout, ready to finally say something. Bakugo, sensing the movement, whipped around faster than Izuku could blink. "What?" Bakugo barked, stepping back into Izuku's personal space. His right hand crackled with dangerous light. "You got a problem with that, Deku?" Without waiting for an answer, Bakugo shoved Izuku. But it wasn't just a shove. Bakugo's palm, popping with a localized explosion intended to burn and bruise, slammed directly into Izuku's chest, right over his heart. "Know your place." Bakugo shouted as the explosion detonated. Boom! The impact was heavy. It should have sent Izuku flying backward. It should have burned his skin. It should have broken a rib, but it didn't. In that millisecond, something inside Izuku Midoriya clicked. It wasn't a sound. It was a sensation. It felt like a rusty gear, stuck for a decade, had suddenly been greased and slammed into overdrive. As the explosion connected with his sternum, Izuku didn't feel pain. He felt pressure. Not the pressure of a blow, but the pressure of a dam holding back water. The heat of the explosion didn't burn him. Instead, it felt like it was being sucked inward. Zip! A sound like a high-voltage wire snapping filled the room. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku looked down at his chest. Bakugo's hand was still there. But there was no smoke. There was no burn mark. Instead, veins of neon green light were spider-webbing out from the point of contact, racing under Izuku's skin, traveling from his chest, up his neck, and down his arms. Ha! Bakugo's eyes widened. He tried to pull his hand back, but for a split second, he couldn't. It was as if Izuku's body was a magnet, and Bakugo's explosion was the iron. The energy rushed into Izuku. It was intoxicating. It was terrifying. It was too much. Izuku's eyes, usually a soft forest green, flashed with a blinding, bioluminescent emerald light. The air around him began to hum, vibrating with pent-up kinetic force. What the hell? Bakugo started to say. Izuku panicked. The sensation was alien. He felt like a balloon inflated to the point of bursting. He felt the energy ricocheting through his bones, looking for an exit. He didn't know how to hold it. He didn't know what it was. He just knew it had to go out. Get off! Izuku screamed. He threw his hands forward. It was a clumsy, desperate shove. A motion he had done 1,000 times before with zero effect. But this time, he wasn't just pushing with muscle. The green light under his skin surged toward his palms. The energy he had just absorbed, the kinetic force of the explosion, the heat, the impact, was multiplied and redirected. Crack boom! The sound was deafening, like a gunshot in a library. The air in front of Izuku distorted. A visible ripple of force erupted from his hands. Bakugo didn't just stumble back. He was launched. The blonde boy flew backward as if he had been hit by a truck. He smashed into the desk behind him, the force of his body splintering the wood into matchsticks, and continued skidding across the floor until he hit the far wall with a heavy thud. The windows of the classroom rattled violently. Papers swirled in the sudden gust of wind. Silence descended. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Bakugo sat slumped against the wall, dazed, blinking rapidly. A trickle of blood ran from his nose. He looked down at his hands, then up at Izuku, his expression one of total, incomprehensible shock. The two lackeys were frozen by the door, their jaws hanging open. And Izuku? Izuku was standing in the center of the room, panting heavily. His hands were outstretched, trembling violently. Thin wisps of green steam were rising from his skin. The glowing veins slowly faded, retreating deep into his muscles until they vanished. He looked at his hands. He looked at the shattered desk. He looked at Bakugo, who was struggling to stand up. Izuku's voice was a whisper. I didn't. Bakugo pulled himself up, swaying slightly. His eyes locked onto Izuku. The confusion was fading, replaced by a storm of emotions, confusion, fear, and a burning question. Deku. Bakugo growled, his voice low and dangerous, but lacking its usual bite. He sounded wary. What the hell was that? Izuku took a step back. I don't know. He grabbed his bag, ignoring the pain in his arms, a dull ache like he had lifted weights for hours, and ran. He ran out of the classroom. He ran past the stunned lackeys. He ran down the hallway, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He didn't stop for his notebook in the koi pond. He just ran. Mom! Mom! Inko Midoriya dropped the spatula she was holding. It clattered against the stovetop. She rushed to the entryway as the front door slammed open. Izuku? What happened? Are you hurt? She saw her son standing there, pale and sweating, clutching his chest. His uniform was rumpled, but he didn't look injured. He looked terrified. I need to go to the doctor, Izuku gasped, his eyes wide. Inko's hands flew to her mouth. The doctor? Why? Does your chest hurt? Is it your heart? No, Izuku shook his head frantically. He looked down at his hands again. He clenched his fist. He could still feel the echo of it. The hum. The power. Mom. I think I just used the quirk. Inko froze. The sadness that had lingered in her eyes for 10 years, the guilt of that day in the doctor's office when she apologized instead of believing, flickered. Izuku, honey, we know that's not. I pushed Kaken, Izuku blurted out. He used an explosion on me, and I didn't burn. I absorbed it. And then I pushed him, and he flew across the room and broke a desk. I glowed, Mom. I glowed. Inko looked at her son. She saw the desperation in his face, but also the conviction. She grabbed her purse and her keys. Get in the car. The wait at the quirk specialist clinic was agonizing. Izuku sat on the paper-covered exam table, his leg bouncing nervously. Inko sat in the chair beside him, wringing her hands. Dr. Tsubasa, the same doctor who had diagnosed Izuku as quirkless a decade ago, walked in. He looked older now, his mustache grayer, his goggles thicker. He was flipping through a clipboard with a furrowed brow. He looked at Izuku. Then at the X-rays on the wall. Then back at Izuku. Well, the doctor said, scratching his head. This is certainly embarrassing. What is it? Inko asked, her voice high with anxiety. Is something wrong with him? Wrong? No. Rare? Extremely. Dr. Tsubasa sighed and tapped the X-ray of Izuku's foot. 10 years ago, I told you that because he had the double joint in his pinky toe, he was quirkless. That is the standard indicator. It's accurate 99.9% of the time. He turned to Izuku. Congratulations, kid. You are the 0.1%. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. So, I have a quirk? You do, the doctor confirmed. We ran a stress test on your muscle fibers and took a blood sample to check your Q factor levels. They are off the charts, but they were dormant. Dormant? Izuku asked. It's a condition we call latent activation or being a late bloomer, the doctor explained, sitting on his stool. Usually, quirks manifest by age 4, but certain emitter quirks, specifically those that rely on external energy sources, require a catalyst event to wake up. Basically, the body doesn't turn the engine on until it realizes it needs to drive. The doctor gestured to Izuku. Your quirk appears to be a form of kinetic accumulation and redistribution. In layman's terms, you are a battery. Izuku's mind began to race. Battery. Accumulation. Redistribution. Here's the theory, the doctor continued. Your body has the ability to absorb kinetic energy, impacts, shockwaves, perhaps even thermal expansion from explosions, and store it within your cells as potential energy. You can then release this energy to enhance your physical abilities or discharge it as a concussive blast. Why didn't it show up before? Inko asked. He's fallen down. He's been pushed. Threshold, the doctor said simply. The body has a safety lock. Small bumps and bruises weren't enough to trigger the survival mechanism. It needed a significant impact, likely combined with high emotional distress, to break the seal. Once the seal is broken, however, it should be easier to access. The doctor looked at Izuku seriously. But you need to be careful, kid. A battery has a limit. If you store too much energy, you'll burn out your nervous system or tear your body apart. If you have no energy stored, you're just a normal human. It's a powerful quirk, but it's high maintenance. Izuku looked at his hands. Tears began to well up in his eyes. Big, fat tears that dripped onto his lap. He wasn't quirkless. He wasn't broken. He was just waiting. Inko burst into tears and hugged him. Oh, Izuku! I'm so happy for you. I'm so sorry for everything. Izuku hugged her back, burying his face in her shoulder. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. I can be a hero. I can actually be a hero. That night, Izuku didn't sleep. He was in his backyard, wearing his gym tracksuit. The moon was high and bright. He stared at the large oak tree near the fence. Kinetic accumulation. He needed to test it. He needed to know how it worked. The doctor said he needed energy to use energy. He walked up to the tree and punched it. Thwack. Ow, he muttered, shaking his hand. Nothing happened. No glowing. Just pain. Okay, so I can't generate it myself by hitting things. I have to be hit. He looked around. He picked up a baseball bat he used to swing around when he was pretending to be All Might as a kid. He held it in one hand and tapped it against his other palm. Tap. Tap. Nothing. He took a deep breath. Higher threshold. He swung the bat harder, slamming it into his thigh. Whack. Gah! He hissed through his teeth. But there, just for a second, a faint green spark flickered across his skin. The pain was there, but it was duller than it should have been. Okay, Izuku panted, a grin spreading across his face despite the bruise forming on his leg. Okay. It absorbs impact to mitigate damage, and stores the rest. He looked at the garden wall. It was about 8 feet high. Gravitational potential energy converts to kinetic energy upon impact, he muttered, his old habits taking over. If I jump from the wall, the impact of landing. He climbed the tree, scrambling up to a branch that hung over the lawn. It was about 10 feet up. Here goes nothing. He jumped. Gravity took hold. He fell. As the ground rushed up to meet him, he focused. He didn't tense up. He tried to open that gate he felt in the classroom. Slam. He hit the grass. His knees buckled. Bzzzt. A surge of green electricity crackled up his legs. The shock of the landing didn't jar his spine. Instead, he felt a sudden rush of caffeine-like energy shoot into his veins. His legs felt light. They felt powerful. I have a charge, he whispered, looking at his glowing shins. I have a charge. He crouched down, channeling that stolen energy back into his muscles. Release. He kicked off the ground. Whoosh. He didn't just jump, he launched. He shot 6 feet into the air, doing an uncontrolled backflip before crashing back down into a heap of tangled limbs. Ow, he groaned, lying in the dirt. The glow faded. He was empty again. He laughed. He lay there in the dirt and laughed until his sides hurt. He had a quirk. It was tricky. It hurt to charge it. It was dangerous, but it was his. The next morning, Aldera Junior High felt different. News traveled fast. The explosion incident had been the talk of the group chats all night. When Izuku walked through the gates, the whispers weren't mocking. They were confused. Fearful. Is that him? I heard he broke Bakugo's ribs. He hadn't. I heard he was hiding his quirk the whole time to make fun of us. Scary. Izuku kept his head up. He gripped the straps of his backpack. He didn't feel like a ghost anymore. He felt solid. He slid open the door to Class 3A. The chatter stopped instantly. Bakugo was sitting at his desk, a new desk. He was staring out the window, his jaw set in a tight line. When Izuku entered, Bakugo turned slowly. His eyes weren't just angry. They were haunted by a shattering worldview. Bakugo's entire identity was built on being the chosen one, the only special person in a sea of mediocrity. If Deku, useless, Pebble Deku, had power, then who was Bakugo? Izuku walked to his seat. He sat down. Izuku flinched instinctively, but he didn't cower. He turned to face Bakugo. Bakugo stood up and walked over. The class held its breath. You lied to me, Bakugo said. His voice wasn't a scream. It was a low, vibrating growl. For 10 years. You watched me. You laughed at me behind my back, didn't you? I didn't, Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady. I didn't know, Kaken. It was dormant. Yesterday, your explosion woke it up. Bakugo's eyes widened slightly. My explosion? The doctor said I needed a massive impact to trigger it, Izuku explained, realizing the irony. You gave that to me. You gave me my quirk, Kaken. Bakugo stared at him. The implication hit him like a physical blow. He had created his own rival. He had tried to crush the pebble, and instead, he had turned it into a diamond. Bakugo's hands twitched. Sparks flew. Don't get cocky, Deku, he spat, though the venom seemed less potent than usual. Just because you have a fancy trick doesn't mean you're strong. A battery is useless once it runs out. I know, Izuku said. He looked Bakugo in the eye. but I can recharge. And I'm going to Ue Kaken. I'm going to be a hero. Bakugo glared at him for a long moment. Then, he scoffed, turning on his heel. Do what you want. I'll just crush you again. And next time, I won't hold back. He sat down. Izuku let out a breath. It wasn't a truce. But it wasn't the bullying of yesterday. It was a declaration of war. And for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya had weapons to fight it. 10 months later, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a garbage dump. It was a mountain of trash, rusted cars, and discarded appliances. But today, it was a training ground. Izuku stood atop a pile of old tires, shirtless, sweat glistening on his skin. He had changed in 10 months. He wasn't the scrawny, fragile boy anymore. His muscles were defined, lean and corded like steel wire. He had to be strong. The doctor had warned him, your quirk puts immense strain on your body. If you fire a cannon from a canoe, the canoe sinks. You need to build a battleship. Okay, Izuku muttered. He checked his watch. Time for the final test. He had spent months figuring out the math of his quirk. 1. Input, kinetic force, punches, falls, blunt trauma. 2. Storage, green bioelectricity. 3. Output, speed boost, strength enhancement, or discharge, shockwave. He had learned that he could hold a charge for about an hour before it dissipated naturally. He had also learned that charging up was painful. He had to condition himself to pain. He looked at the target, a rusted, overturned pickup truck about 20 meters away. Izuku took a deep breath. He ran toward a stack of crushed cars that formed a makeshift tower. He scrambled up the side, moving with agility born of repetitive drills. He reached the top, 30 feet in the air. Impact battery, charge phase. He leaped off. He fell 30 feet. He didn't roll. He landed in a crouch on a solid slab of concrete he had cleared. Crunch. The impact was brutal. His bones groaned. But immediately, the green lightning surged. His entire body lit up like a neon sign, his hair standing on end, the air crackling with ozone. 10% charge. He yelled. He didn't stop. He ran at the truck. He was fast, faster than a normal human. He closed the distance in a blur. Release. He slammed his fist into the side of the truck. K-rang. The metal crumpled inward. The 2-ton truck groaned and slid 5 feet sideways, screeching against the sand. Izuku stood back, shaking his hand. The glow faded. Not bad, he panted. But not enough. If I want to pass the exam, I need to be able to move that truck, not just dent it. He looked at the sunrise over the ocean. The entrance exam for UA High was in 1 week. He wasn't All Might's successor. He hadn't met the #1 hero in a dramatic sludge villain incident. All Might had resolved that quickly while Izuku was at the doctor's office that fateful day. He was doing this on his own. He picked up a heavy pipe and swung it against his other arm, wincing as he absorbed the blow, banking the small spark of energy. One more set, he whispered to himself. He was Izuku Midoriya. His quirk was impact battery. The world would try to crush him, to beat him down, to break him. And he would say, "Thank you for the ammo. The laws of physics are absolute. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred or transformed." Izuku Midoriya muttered this mantra under his breath as he hung upside down from a rusted pull-up bar in the corner of his bedroom, his face flush red with exertion. For the past 10 months, Izuku had become a student of 2 things, hero analysis and physics. If his body was a battery, he needed to understand the voltage, the amperage, and the capacity. He needed to know the breaking point of his own insulation. Quirk analysis entry, impact battery, he whispered, gravity tugging at his curls. Absorption efficiency is roughly 80%. 20% of kinetic force still bypasses the conversion process and manifests as blunt force trauma. Meaning, I still get hurt. I just get hurt less. He dropped from the bar, landing in a crouch. He didn't activate his quirk. He didn't glow. He just absorbed the small shock with his newly developed leg muscles. He walked over to his mirror. The boy staring back wasn't the frail, ghost-like figure from the start of the school year. His shoulders were broader, his chest defined. Scars, small, white lines, littered his forearms and shins. They were trophies of his experiments. He had spent months throwing himself against walls, jumping from increasingly dangerous heights, and asking his mother to hit him with heavy objects, a request that had led to a very tearful and firm refusal from Inko, forcing him to build a makeshift pendulum in the backyard using a tire and a rope. He checked his phone. The UA entrance exam was a week away. "I'm ready," he said, though his voice wavered slightly. "I have to be." The last day of junior high. The atmosphere at Aldera Junior High had shifted over the last year. The mockery had died down, replaced by a wary curiosity. Izuku Midoriya was no longer the quirkless Deku. He was the weird kid who glows when he trips. But the biggest change was Katsuki Bakugo. Since the incident in the classroom, Bakugo had been quiet. Not silent. He was still loud, brash, and aggressive with everyone else, but with Izuku, he was distant. It was a tactical silence. Bakugo had realized something fundamental. Izuku's power relied on being hit. If Bakugo didn't hit him, Izuku was powerless. It was a form of psychological warfare that frustrated Izuku to no end. He needed sparring practice, and his childhood rival was starving him of it. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day and, effectively, the end of their middle school lives. "Don't forget to turn in your career counseling forms," the teacher called out as students flooded into the hallway. Izuku packed his bag slowly. He felt a shadow loom over his desk. He tensed, waiting for an explosion, a shove, anything to charge his reserves. Bakugo stood there, hands in his pockets. He looked down at Izuku with narrowed, crimson eyes. "You're actually going through with it," Bakugo said. It wasn't a question. "I am," Izuku replied, slinging his yellow backpack over his shoulder. "I'm going to take the exam, Kaken," Bakugo scoffed, a sharp, harsh sound. "Don't think a cheap parlor trick makes you a hero, Deku. A battery that needs a jumpstart is just dead weight. Unless someone is stupid enough to hit you, you're just a nerd in a costume. That's why I trained," Izuku said, meeting his gaze. "I don't need to wait for them to hit me anymore. I can create the impact myself. Gravity. Momentum. I can use the environment." Bakugo's eye twitched. He hated that answer. He hated that Izuku had a plan. "Whatever," Bakugo grunted, turning away. "Just don't die in the practical. It would look bad on my record if my classmate got crushed by a robot." He walked out, his lackeys trailing behind him. Izuku watched him go, letting out a long sigh. "He didn't blast me. I'm walking home on zero charge." That was the fatal flaw of his quirk. It had a leakage rate. The energy he stored didn't stay forever. It dissipated over time, radiating off him as low-level heat. If he didn't use it within an hour or two, he was back to baseline human stats. Currently, he was empty. The walk home. The afternoon sun was scorching. The heat haze shimmered off the asphalt of Mizurufu. Izuku walked through the shopping district, his mind drifting to strategy. The entrance exam. They use robots. Metal. Hard impacts. That's good. I can tank a hit from a robotic arm to charge up, then discharge it into the chassis. But if they use missiles or lasers, I'm in trouble. Heat without force is just heat. I can't absorb a laser. He flipped through his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 14. The pages were filled with diagrams of kinetic transfer and force vectors. He turned down a narrow street, taking a shortcut under a bridge. It was cooler here, the shadows stretching long and dark. He heard a sound. A wet, slurping noise. Like mud being dragged across concrete. Izuku stopped. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Instinct, honed by 10 months of hyper-awareness regarding his surroundings, screamed at him. "Turn around." He spun on his heel just as a massive, dark green mass surged from a manhole cover. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling, distorted voice rasped. Two bulging, yellow eyes stared out from the sludge. The villain was liquid, amorphous, and smelled like raw sewage and rot. "You'll do nicely, kid." Izuku's eyes widened. He dropped his notebook. He was empty. He had no charge. He was just a fit 14-year-old boy against a villain made of fluid. "Run." Izuku scrambled backward, his sneakers squeaking on the pavement. "Stay back." The villain lunged. A tendril of sludge shot forward faster than a cobra. Izuku tried to dodge, but the sludge was too fast. It wrapped around his ankle, cold and slimy. With a violent yank, Izuku was pulled off his feet. He hit the ground hard. Smack! The impact jarred his shoulder. Bzzzt, a tiny spark. A meager flicker of green light traced his collarbone. The fall had generated a microscopic amount of energy. Maybe 1% capacity. Not enough to fight. Barely enough to blink. Don't struggle, the villain hissed, flowing over Izuku like a tidal wave. The sludge forced its way into his mouth, his nose. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll all be over, Izuku gagged. The taste was vile, oil, dirt, and malice. He clawed at the fluid, but his fingers passed right through. It was like trying to punch water. I can't breathe. I can't breathe, panic set in. His vision began to spot with black dots. Think. Impact battery. I need energy. I need him to hit me, but the villain wasn't hitting him. He was suffocating him. It was a soft, crushing pressure. There was no kinetic spike, no sudden jolt of force to absorb. It was a slow, agonizing squeeze. I'm going to die, Izuku realized, his struggles weakening. I finally got a quirk, and I'm going to die because I forgot to charge my battery. Texas. Smash! The voice boomed like thunder, vibrating through the sewer tunnel. The manhole cover flew into the air. A figure, massive and muscular, blocked out the sun. All Might? The wind pressure hit first. It was a wall of compressed air. Boom! The blast hit the sludge villain with the force of a hurricane. The liquid body was blown apart, splattering against the tunnel walls. Izuku was released instantly, gasping for air, coughing up bile and slime. But something else happened. The shockwave of the punch hit Izuku. It wasn't a direct hit, but the air pressure alone was enough to knock a normal person unconscious. Izuku was thrown back against the concrete wall. Crack! His head slammed into the wall. His back hit the stone. Pain, and then power. The world turned green. Izuku's eyes snapped open. The wind pressure from All Might's smash, combined with the impact against the wall, flooded his system. The dormant engine roared to life. His skin glowed with a blinding emerald light, illuminating the dark tunnel. Whoa there, young man! All Might's voice cut through the ringing in his ears. Izuku sat up, trembling. Not from fear, but from the sudden overdose of kinetic energy. He felt like he had just drunk 10 energy drinks in a second. Sparks arced from his fingertips, scorching the pavement. All Might? Izuku squeaked, his voice vibrating. The towering hero stood there, holding 2 plastic soda bottles filled with the captured sludge villain. He flashed his signature smile, giving a thumbs up. I am here. And I apologize for getting you caught up in my justice ing. Usually, I'm more careful with the shockwaves. All Might paused, looking at Izuku. The boy was glowing like a glow stick. Say, All Might leaned in, that is quite the quirk you have there. You absorbed the recoil of my smash? Sturdy, Izuku scrambled to his feet. He was vibrating. He needed to discharge this energy, or he'd be jittery for hours. Why, you're All Might! You saved me! Can I get your autograph? He looked for his notebook. It was open on the ground. All Might had already signed it. Already done, my boy. Now, I must be off to deliver this guy to the police. Wait! Izuku yelled, the electricity in his veins making him bold. I have a question. All Might was already crouching, preparing to jump. No time. Evil never sleeps. Boom. All Might launched himself into the sky, and Izuku, acting on pure adrenaline and quirk-induced mania, grabbed onto All Might's leg. Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive. All Might shouted as they soared over the city. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed, the wind whipping his face. Fair point. They landed on a rooftop a few minutes later. Izuku collapsed, panting. The glow on his skin was fading, the energy slowly dissipating into the atmosphere as heat. Then, the steam cleared. Izuku looked up. All Might was gone. In his place stood a skeletal, emaciated man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Way out? Izuku shrieked. You deflated. What followed was the truth. The injury. The limit. The fading flame of the symbol of peace. Izuku listened, entranced and horrified. The greatest hero was running on fumes. So All Might said, wiping blood from his chin. You asked a question? Izuku swallowed. He stood up, his legs still shaking slightly. Can I be a hero with a power that hurts me? Izuku asked. My quirk, it's just a battery. If I run out, I'm nothing. And to get strong, I have to get hurt. I have to break myself to fight. Can someone like that be like you? All Might looked at the boy. He saw the scars on his arms. He saw the determination in his eyes. He saw the fading green light. Young man, All Might said softly. Pros are always risking their lives. Some have quirks that burn their skin, or break their bones, or drain their vitality. Heroism is not about having a perfect power. It is about the spirit to use what you have to save others. He looked at the sky. However, it is a dangerous path. If your power requires you to take damage, you must be smarter than anyone else. You cannot be reckless. Before the conversation could continue, an explosion rocked the city. A pillar of black smoke rose from the shopping district. A villain? All Might stood up, instinctively reaching for his muscle form, but faltered. Damn it. My time is up. Izuku looked at the smoke. That's near where we were. Wait. The sludge villain. All Might patted his pockets. The bottles, they were gone. Izuku's face went pale. I grabbed your leg. You must have dropped them. It's my fault, All Might whispered, horror dawning on his face. The inferno. The scene at the Tatooine Station shopping district was a nightmare. Flames roared 3 stories high. The heat was blistering. Sirens wailed, creating a dissonant symphony with the screams of the crowd. Izuku ran. He ran faster than he ever had, guilt gnawing at his gut. I distracted him. I caused this. If anyone gets hurt, it's on me. He pushed through the crowd barrier. Stay back, kid! It's too dangerous. Death Arm shouted, his massive arms raised to block debris. Izuku ignored him, his eyes scanning the chaos. The sludge villain was huge now, having absorbed trash and debris to increase his mass. He was a towering fortress of grime and hatred. Where are the heroes? A bystander yelled. They can't get close. Another replied. The wind, the fire, the sludge, it's a stalemate. Kamui Woods was keeping the crowd back. Empty Lady couldn't enter the narrow street. Backdraft was fighting the fire but losing, and in the center of the sludge, struggling like a fly in amber, was a boy. Explosions popped from the boy's palms, wild and desperate. Kaken. Izuku froze. Bakugo was being suffocated. The sludge was forcing its way down his throat. Bakugo's eyes were wide, frantic, searching the crowd for help. He looked small. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo looked like a victim. The heroes stood there, paralyzed by the incompatibility of their quirks. I can't grab him. Death Arms yelled. He's too fluid. I have to wait for someone with a blast quirk. Kamui shouted. They're waiting, Izuku thought. They're watching him die. His legs moved before his brain gave the order. Hey! Come back here! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ducked under the police tape. He sprinted toward the inferno. Think, Izuku. Think. He was running on empty. He had used the last of the All Might charge jumping to the roof. He had nothing. You again? The sludge villain roared, seeing the green-haired boy approaching. I'll kill you this time. The villain raised a massive tentacle of sludge, hardened with concrete and scrap metal. Die. The tentacle swung down. Most people would dodge. Most people would dive. Izuku Midoriya stopped running. He planted his feet. He crossed his arms over his head. I need a charge. Hit me! Izuku screamed. The crowd gasped. All Might, hiding in the back in his skeletal form, gripped his chest. Wham! The tentacle slammed into Izuku with the force of a wrecking ball. The pavement beneath Izuku's feet cracked and cratered. Dust and debris flew into the air. He's dead! Someone screamed. But from within the cloud of dust, a sound emerged. Vroom. It sounded like a turbine spinning up to maximum velocity. The dust cleared. Izuku was standing in the crater. His knees were buckled, His arms were bruised and bleeding, and his gym uniform was torn. But he was glowing, not the soft glow from earlier. This was blinding. The kinetic energy of a monster's killshot had been absorbed instantly. His skin was practically translucent with green lightning. His eyes were white-hot. You! Izuku gritted his teeth, the power surging through his muscles, repairing the micro-tears, flooding him with adrenaline. You shouldn't have done that. What? The villain recoiled, sensing the shift in pressure. Izuku vanished. He didn't run, he burst. Using the stored energy, he propelled himself forward at subsonic speed. He appeared in front of the sludge face in a millisecond. He didn't punch the villain. Punching sludge was useless, it just reformed. He had analyzed that during the first attack. He needed to disrupt the cohesion. He needed a shockwave. He plunged his glowing hands into the sludge, right near where Bakugo's face was visible. Kaken, close your eyes! Izuku yelled. Bakugo, barely conscious, blinked. Deku? Izuku channeled the stored energy, all of it. He didn't try to enhance his strength. He converted the kinetic potential into a raw, vibrational discharge. Impact. Pulse. Boom! It wasn't an explosion of fire. It was an explosion of force. A spherical shockwave erupted from Izuku's body. The effect was instantaneous. The sludge villain didn't just break apart, he atomized. The vibration shattered the surface tension of the fluid. The villain exploded outward in a massive splash of mud and slime, covering the entire street. The fire around them was snuffed out instantly by the air pressure change. Bakugo fell forward, coughing and retching, liberated from his prison. Izuku stood there, the glow fading rapidly. He swayed. His vision blurred. He had overcharged and discharged in 10 seconds. His nerves felt like they were on fire. Deku! Bakugo rasped, wiping slime from his eyes. He looked up at Izuku with a mixture of horror and confusion. But it wasn't over. The sludge began to coalesce again. The villain wasn't dead, just scattered. The eyes reformed, bloodshot and furious. You little brat! The villain shrieked, rising up like a tidal wave behind them. I'll crush you both. Izuku turned, his knees trembling. He was empty again. He had nothing left. Kaken, Izuku panted. I'm out. I need a spark. Bakugo looked at the villain, then at Izuku. He saw the desperation. He understood the mechanics. For the first time in their lives, they were on the same side. Bakugo gritted his teeth. He didn't say a word. He stood up, shakily, and placed his palm flat against Izuku's back. Don't tell me what to do, nerd, Bakugo growled. Bang! Bakugo fired an explosion. Not to hurt Izuku, but to push him. The blast hit Izuku's back. The heat, the force, the impact. Izuku gasped as the familiar green energy flooded his spine. It wasn't huge. Bakugo was exhausted too, but it was enough. Izuku pivoted, using the momentum of the explosion to spin. He borrowed Bakugo's power, amplified it with his own body's torque, and unleashed a roundhouse kick into the reforming face of the villain. Detroit. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed the back of Izuku's shirt. Another hand grabbed Bakugo. Smash! All Might was there. He had pushed past his limit. He stood between the boys and the villain. He drew back a fist that smoked with power. The punch he threw changed the weather. The updraft created a tornado that sucked up the villain, the fire, and the debris, sending it all spiraling into the stratosphere. The clouds above spiraled open, and rain began to fall on the burning city. Izuku and Bakugo sat on the pavement, drenched in black rain and slime. All Might stood victorious, his steam hiding his skeletal form, his fist raised high. The crowd erupted. The aftermath, the scolding was brutal. You are a moron! Kamui Wood shouted, pointing a wooden finger at Izuku's chest. You have no license! You jumped into a hostage situation. You could have gotten yourself killed and the hostage killed. Death Arms crossed his arms. Whatever quirk that was, it's dangerous. You were glowing like a flare. Do you have any idea the liability involved here? Izuku bowed his head, accepting the verbal lashing. I'm sorry. My body just moved. On the other side of the police line, the heroes were praising Bakugo. That bravery, that quirk is top tier. You held out for so long. You're going to be a great sidekick one day. Bakugo ignored them. He was staring at Izuku. He watched as the heroes yelled at the boy who had actually saved him. His fists clenched. Eventually, the police released them. Izuku walked home in the twilight. His body ached. He had a bandage on his cheek and bruises forming on his arms. He felt hollow. Izuku stopped. He turned around. Bakugo was running to catch up. He stopped a few feet away, panting. He looked furious, humiliated, and conflicted. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo shouted, his voice cracking. I didn't need you. I was fine. I would have gotten free. Izuku didn't flinch. He just watched. Don't think you won. Bakugo pointed a finger at him. You just used my power again. That was my explosion you used at the end. You're nothing without a source. I'm still better than you. He turned around and started stomping away. Then he stopped. Without looking back, he muttered, loud enough for Izuku to hear, but you didn't die. So, whatever. Bakugo marched off into the night. Izuku blinked. A small smile touched his lips. That was as close to a thank you as he was ever going to get. I am here. Izuku jumped a foot in the air. Wah! All Might slid out from around a corner in a blur, striking a pose, before instantly poofing into a cloud of steam and blood. Young Midoriya, All Might said, reverting to his skeletal form. All Might. Are you okay? You pushed yourself again. I am fine. All Might waved him off. I came to find you. The mood shifted. The streetlights flickered on. I watched you today, All Might said, his voice serious. I saw you run in when the pros stood back. I saw you take a hit that would have crushed a normal man, just to save your friend. I didn't think, Izuku admitted, looking at his feet. My legs just moved. I couldn't watch him die. That, All Might said, is the prerequisite for a hero. Izuku looked up, tears welling in his eyes. However, All Might continued, raising a finger. I also saw your quirk. It is volatile. Izuku nodded. It's a battery. If I take too much, I break. If I have too little, I'm useless. All Might sighed. He looked at the boy. He had been searching for a successor for One for All. He had considered the boy from UA, Mirio Togata. He looked at Izuku. This boy had the heart of a hero. He had the spirit. But his body was already a vessel for a dangerous power. If I give him One for All, All Might thought, the combination might destroy him. His body absorbs energy. One for All is infinite energy. He would be a bomb that never stops detonating. All Might made a choice. A hard choice. Young Midoriya, All Might said. I cannot give you my power. It would be irresponsible of me. Your vessel is already full. Izuku's face fell slightly. He hadn't expected power, but the rejection still stung. But All Might stepped closer, placing a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder. You don't need my power. You have your own. And today, you proved that your power is enough to save lives. Izuku's eyes widened. I told you earlier that you needed to be smarter than anyone else. All Might smiled. I want to help you do that. I may not be able to give you my quirk, but I can give you my experience. I can teach you how to be a symbol. You want to train me? Izuku gasped. The UA entrance exam is in 1 week, All Might said, pointing at the beach. I have a training regimen that will turn you from a reckless battery into a precision instrument. Are you interested? Izuku wiped his tears. He clenched his fist. The green sparks danced under his skin, reacting to his emotions. Yes. Izuku shouted. Yes, All Might. All Might grinned. Good. Then get some sleep, kid. Tomorrow, we clean the beach. The beach 5 days later. The training was hell. But it was different from Izuku's solitary grind. All Might wasn't just a gym teacher. He was a master of kinetics. He taught Izuku how to roll with punches to maximize absorption while minimizing damage. He taught him how to store energy in specific muscle groups, loading his legs for speed or his arms for power. Don't just take the hit. All Might yelled, sitting atop a refrigerator Izuku was trying to move. Parry it. If you parry, the kinetic friction still charges you, but you don't take the blunt trauma. Be water, young Midoriya, but water that hits back. Izuku was currently trying to push a pickup truck through the sand. He was panting, sweat dripping off his nose. It's heavy, that's friction. All Might laughed. Physics is your best friend and your worst enemy. Now charge up. All Might threw a medicine ball at Izuku. Izuku caught it with his chest. Oof. Absorption. The green glow flared. Izuku grunted, channeling the energy into his legs. He dug his heels into the sand. Smash! He shoved the truck. It rolled 10 feet. Better! All Might clapped. The morning of the exam, the sun rose over a clean beach. The garbage was gone. The sunrise reflected off the pristine water. Izuku stood at the seawall, screaming at the ocean. I'm Red-Eye. He was wearing his middle school uniform, but underneath, he felt like a soldier in armor. He had mastered the basics. He knew his limits. He knew that he could safely hold a 20% charge for 2 hours. He knew that if he went to 100%, he would break bones. All Might stood beside him, handing him a water bottle. You did good, kid, All Might said softly. You built a vessel worthy of the hero course. Now go show them. All Might? Izuku asked, looking at his hands. Yes, thank you. For not giving up on me, All Might smiled. I should be thanking you. You reminded me that heroism isn't about the quirk. It's about the interference. Izuku checked his watch. I'm gonna be late. He grabbed his bag and sprinted off. He didn't use his quirk. He saved the charge. He ran with his own 2 legs toward the towering glass structure of Yue High. As he reached the gates, he saw the massive crowd of examinees. He saw Bakugo scowling near the entrance. Izuku took a deep breath. He stepped forward. He tripped. He flailed, waiting for the impact. He prepared to absorb the fall, hoping it wouldn't discharge and crack the pavement. But he didn't hit the ground. He floated. Are you okay? A bubbly voice. A round face with rosy cheeks appeared in his vision. A girl with brown hair had touched his shoulder. It's my quirk, she smiled, setting him down gently. Sorry for using it without asking, but it's bad luck to fall on the exam day. Izuku stood up, blushing furiously. Thank you. Good luck. She waved and walked inside. Izuku stood there, heart pounding. I talked to a girl. Well, she talked to me, but still, he looked at his hand. He hadn't absorbed any energy from the fall because she had nullified the gravity. No impact. No charge. Wait, he thought, panic rising. If she floats things. I can't get energy from falling. That's a bad matchup for me. He shook his head. Focus, Izuku. Analyze. Adapt. He walked through the gates of Yue, the green sparks dormant beneath his skin, waiting for the first hit. The written exam was, ironically, the most peaceful part of Izuku Midoriya's day. While other students tapped their pencils in rhythmic anxiety or groaned at the complex quadratic equations, Izuku found a strange solace in the silence. For years, while his peers practiced their telekinesis or fire-breathing in the schoolyard, Izuku had been in the library. He had dissected hero laws, memorized the physics of quirk interactions, and studied general education to a level that bordered on obsessive. He breezed through the questions. Question 4. Calculate the trajectory of a projectile affected by a wind-based quirk with a velocity of. Simple, Izuku thought, his pencil scratching rapidly. Account for the drag coefficient, adjust for the variable wind speed, done. He finished with 20 minutes to spare. He set his pencil down and looked at his hands. They were calloused, scarred, and wrapped in compression tape. The written test proved he had the mind of a hero. Now, he had to prove he had the body. The orientation. The auditorium was vast, a cavernous hall filled with thousands of hopeful students. The air buzzed with nervous energy. Everybody say hey. Present Mick's voice, amplified by his voice quirk, slammed into the audience like a physical wall of sound. Izuku winced, instinctively absorbing a tiny fraction of the sonic vibration into his chest. It wasn't enough to charge him, just enough to make his sternum vibrate pleasantly. Welcome to my live show. Today, you listener embryos will be conducting a 10-minute mock urban battle. The screen behind the pro hero lit up, displaying a digital map of a city. You'll be split into battle centers A through G. No working with your friends, you dig? Izuku glanced at the card in his hand. Battle Center B. He looked over at Bakugo, who was sitting 2 seats away, legs kicked up on the seat in front of him. Bakugo was staring at his own card with a scowl that could curdle milk. TCH, Bakugo grunted. Looks like they split us up so we can't crush it together. Lucky you, Deku. You won't have to watch me steal all your kills. Yeah, Izuku whispered, gripping his card. Lucky. Present Mike continued, explaining the 3 types of villain bots. 1-pointer, fast but weak. 2-pointer, balanced. 3-pointer, heavily armored and strong. And finally, may I ask a question? A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. Spotlights swung to illuminate a tall boy with glasses and a severe haircut. He stood with the rigidity of a soldier. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. The boy shouted, pointing at the pamphlet. If this is a printing error, you should be ashamed. We are here seeking the guidance of Japan's top heroes. He spun around, pointing a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you? The one with the curly hair. Izuku froze. And me? You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. The auditorium erupted in stifled giggles. Izuku shrank into his seat, his face burning. Sorry. Okay. Examinee 7111, thanks for the segue. Present Mike shouted, regaining control. The 4th robot is a 0-pointer. It's an obstacle. A gimmick. Think of it like a thwomp in Mario. There's no point in fighting it, so I recommend you just run away. Izuku looked at the silhouette of the massive robot on the screen. Run away, he thought. Conservation of energy. Don't waste a charge on something that gives 0 return. That's all from me. I'll leave you with a present, plus Ultra. Good luck. Battle Center B. The bus ride to the testing grounds was silent. Izuku sat near the back, vibrating with nerves. He was wearing his green tracksuit, modified with reinforced padding on the elbows and knees, areas where he usually took impacts. When they stepped off the bus, the scale of UA became apparent. The testing ground wasn't a gym. It was a city, a sprawling, concrete replica of a downtown district, complete with office buildings, paved roads, and streetlights. A crowd of students gathered before the massive steel gates. Izuku stretched his arms, feeling the tightness in his muscles. He scanned the crowd. He saw the boy with glasses, Ida, doing high knees. He saw a boy with a laser belt, and he saw her. The girl from the entrance. The one who had stopped him from falling. She was taking deep breaths, slapping her cheeks to psych herself up. I should thank her, Izuku thought. It might help me calm down, too. He took a step toward her. Where do you think you're going? A hand chopped the air in front of Izuku's face. It was Ida. She is clearly trying to focus, Ida stated, his voice low but intense. Are you planning to sabotage her concentration? Is this part of your strategy? No. Izuku stammered. Start. Present Mix's voice boomed from the observation towers. The students froze, confused. There was no countdown. What are you waiting for? Present Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Die! The gates groaned open. Instantly, the mob surged forward. It was a stampede. Students with speed quirks took the lead. Ida's engines roared, shooting him to the front. The laser boy fired a beam to propel himself. Izuku was left in the dust. He wasn't fast. Not yet. Right, Izuku muttered, forcing his legs to move. Input first. Output second. He ran into the city, lagging behind the main group. The sounds of destruction were already echoing, explosions, crashing metal, and shouting. He turned down an alleyway, away from the main thoroughfare. He needed a target. He needed a spark. Clank. Whir. A robot rolled out from behind a vending machine. It was a 1-pointer. It looked like a trash can on a unicycle with long, whip-like arms. Target acquired, the robot synthesized. It lunged. Izuku didn't dodge. He saw the metal arm swinging toward his ribs. His instinct screamed at him to duck, to block, to run. But he suppressed it. He had spent 10 months overriding his survival instincts. Except the kinetic energy. He turned his body, presenting his shoulder, tensing the deltoid muscle just enough to protect the bone but not enough to deflect the blow. Whack! The metal whip slammed into him. Gah! Izuku grunted, the breath knocked out of him. Pain flared, hot and sharp. But immediately following the pain came the rush. Bzzzt. A surge of green electricity sparked from the point of impact. It traveled down his arm, wrapping around his bicep like a glowing tourniquet. The adrenaline hit his brain, sharpening his vision. One hit, Izuku hissed through his teeth. 10% charge. The robot raised its arm for a second strike. Too slow. Izuku stepped in. He didn't just punch, he released. He pushed the stored energy from his shoulder into his fist. Slam! His fist connected with the robot's central eye. The green light discharged explosively. The metal faceplate caved in, and the robot was sent flying backward, smashing into the brick wall and crumbling into a heap of sparks and wire. 1 point, Izuku panted, shaking his hand. The glow faded. He was empty again. He needed more. He ran back toward the main street. He saw a 2-pointer, a scorpion-like machine with a heavy tail. It was cornering another student. Hey! Izuku shouted, waving his arms. Over here! The robot turned its sensors toward him. Threat detected. The tail whipped out. It was heavy. Fast. Izuku smiled grimly. Perfect. He caught the tail. It was a risky move. If he mistimed it, his ribs would be dust. But All Might had taught him well. He caught the metal appendage with both hands, letting the force push him backward. His shoes skidded on the pavement, leaving black rubber marks. Vroom. The energy transfer was massive. His arms lit up like neon tubes. His hair stood on end. The green lightning arced off his body, scorching the asphalt. 30% charge. Izuku yelled, his voice distorted by the energy coursing through his vocal cords. He didn't let go of the tail. Instead, he clamped down, his grip's strength enhanced by the stored power. He spun. Using the robot's own momentum and his charged muscles, he swung the entire 2-pointer into the air like a flail. Crash! He slammed the robot into a nearby lamppost, shattering both machines instantly. That's amazing! The student he saved gasped. Izuku didn't stop. He couldn't. He was leaking energy. If he stopped now, the charge would dissipate as heat, and he'd just be tired. He had to keep the chain going. He sprinted down the street. With 20% charge left in his legs, he was moving at 30 miles per hour. He bounced off a wall, using the impact of his feet against the concrete to top off his reserves. Wall jump. Impact. Charge. Boost. He was a pinball of destruction. He found a cluster of 3-pointers. 3 massive, tank-treaded robots armed with machine guns, rubber bullets, but high velocity. They opened fire. Bang bang bang. Izuku crossed his arms over his face. The rubber bullets hit him like hammers. Thud. 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 Each impact was a deposit in the bank. His arms glowed brighter and brighter. The pain was excruciating. His forearms were definitely bruising, maybe hairline fractures, but the power was intoxicating. System overload warning, he muttered, his eyes glowing white. He dropped his arms. He was radiating so much heat that the air around him shimmered. Discharge. He punched the air. He didn't hit the robots directly. He hit the space between them. The kinetic blast created a localized shockwave. Boom. The 3 robots were blown apart by the pressure wave, their chassis crumpling like soda cans. Izuku fell to his knees, gasping. The glow vanished. Steam rose from his skin. 28 points, he counted, wiping blood from his lip. I need more. The observation room. In a dark room lined with monitors, the faculty of UA watched the chaos unfold. This year's batch is spirited, Midnight commented, licking her lips. Lots of flashy quirks. We have a few standouts in terms of raw combat ability, Snipe noted, pointing at a screen showing Bakugo in another center, blasting through robots with terrifying precision. That explosion kid is feral. And the engine boy, Ectoplasm added. Efficient. Good stamina. But what about this one? Principal Niza pointed a paw at the center screen. It showed Izuku Midoriya. He was currently deliberately running into a falling pile of debris to catch a heavy stone, absorbing the impact, and throwing it back at a robot with cannon-like force. Candidate 7111 knees it chirped. Emitter Quirk, impact battery. Emitter type. He fights like a berserker, Aizawa muttered from the back of the room, his eyes narrowed. He's taking damage intentionally. Look at his arms. They're purple. He's trading health for power. It's effective, but sustainable? Doubtful. He understands the physics of his power well, Cementas countered. He's calculating the vector of every hit. He's not just getting hit, he's positioning himself to maximize absorption. True, All Might thought, standing silently in the corner in his yellow suit, oversized to hide his skinny form. He's doing it, young Midoriya. But he's pushing the limit. He's running on adrenaline now. The pain will catch up to him soon. Well, Nisa smiled, his hand hovering over a large red button. They have demonstrated their combat prowess. But a hero isn't just about fighting villains. Let's see how they handle despair. He pressed the button. The 0-pointer. The ground jumped. Izuku stumbled, nearly losing his footing. An earthquake? Then came the sound. It was a grinding, metallic roar that vibrated in the teeth of every student in the city. From the central plaza, a shadow eclipsed the sun. It rose above the skyscrapers. A robot. But calling it a robot felt like an understatement. It was a moving mountain of green metal. Its hand was the size of a bus. Its red eyes scanned the city like the gaze of a god. The 0-pointer. That's not a gimmick. A student screamed. That's a monster. Panic ensued. The students, who moments ago were confident warriors, turned into a terrified mob. They ran. They trampled over each other to get away from the main street. Izuku stood frozen. His neck craned up. It's huge. It has to be 20 stories tall. How did they even build that? Dust and debris rained down as the robot took a step. The impact shook the entire district. Windows shattered. Izuku turned to run. President Mike said it's an obstacle. 0 points. There's no reason to fight it. My arms are screaming. I have maybe 5% charge left from that last jump. I need to retreat. He took a step back. Oh wow! A cry of pain. Faint, buried under the noise of crumbling concrete. Izuku stopped. He looked back toward the robot. The dust cloud was thick, but through the haze, he saw a pile of rubble. Trapped under a slab of concrete was the girl. Uraraka. She was struggling, her face twisted in pain. Her leg was pinned. The 0-pointer was looming over her. It raised a massive, flat foot, preparing for its next step. If it stepped down, it would crush the street, the rubble, and her. The other students were fleeing. Don't look back. We gotta go. She's done for. Izuku looked at the fleeing backs of his potential classmates. He looked at the massive foot descending. He looked at the girl. His body moved. He didn't think about the points. He didn't think about Yue. He didn't think about All Might. He just ran. Wait! He screamed, his voice cracking. He sprinted toward the robot. He sprinted into the danger zone. I have no charge. I have no charge. His mind raced. I can't push the rubble off her fast enough without strength. I can't punch the robot with my bare hands. I need energy. Massive energy. He looked at the robot's foot. It was descending. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. The robot was heavy. Thousands of tons. Even moving slowly, the energy of that foot hitting the ground would be catastrophic. If I can't generate the force, I have to steal it. Get away! Uraraka screamed, seeing him running toward her. Hold on! Izuku yelled. He didn't run to her. He ran past her. He ran directly to where the robot's foot was about to land, about 10 meters in front of Uraraka. He planted his feet. He looked up at the soul of the metal titan. It blocked out the sky. Come on! Izuku roared, spreading his arms wide. Give it to me! Thump! The foot landed. It didn't land on him. That would have squashed him like a bug. It landed right in front of him. The shockwave was physical. The pavement rippled like a carpet being flicked. A wall of compressed air and kinetic force exploded outward from the impact zone. Any normal human would have been turned to jelly by the pressure wave. Izuku Midoriya embraced it. He opened every receptor in his body. He tore down the safety gates. He let the flood in. The sound was deafening. A high-pitched whine, like a jet engine taking off, erupted from Izuku's body. Crack! His sleeves exploded. His pant legs shredded. The green light wasn't just under his skin anymore. It was blinding. A pillar of emerald energy shot up into the sky. His veins bulged, glowing white-hot. Ea-ah-ah-wea, Izuku screamed. It felt like he was drinking lava. It felt like his bones were melting. The sheer volume of energy from the zero-pointer's step was too much. It was way over 100%. It was 1,000,000% overcharge. His skin began to tear. Red blood mixed with green sparks. He had 1 second before he exploded. He bent his knees. The concrete beneath him vaporized just from the contact with his energy field. Smash! He jumped. He launched himself straight up, aiming for the robot's head. He moved so fast he broke the sound barrier. A sonic boom shattered the remaining windows in the district. He reached the face of the zero-pointer in a heartbeat. He pulled his right fist back. The energy gathered there, swirling like a miniature nebula. His arm was purple, swollen, and crackling with black lightning. Get away from her, he punched. He didn't touch the metal. He released the energy about an inch from the surface. Impact battery, 100% discharge. The sky split. A beam of pure force punched through the center of the zero-pointer. The massive metal head didn't just dent, it evaporated. The force traveled down the neck, shattering the internal skeleton. The robot tipped backward. It looked like a skyscraper undergoing a controlled demolition. Explosions rippled down its spine. Izuku hung in the air for a second, suspended by the recoil. Then gravity remembered him. He fell. And as the adrenaline faded, the pain arrived. His right arm was broken, shattered. His legs, which had taken the initial launch force, were twisted at wrong angles. He was falling from 20 stories up. I did it, he thought, his vision blurring. But I can't land. I have no energy left. I used it all. He watched the ground rushing up. Sorry, Mom. I guess I was reckless. Suddenly a slap. He felt a light sting on his cheek. Release. The terrifying speed of his fall vanished. He floated weightless, inches above the ground. Uraraka, battered and covered in dust, was floating next to him on a piece of debris she had used as a surfboard. Her fingers were pressed together. She looked nauseous. She released her quirk, and they both dropped the final few inches to the pavement. Izuku landed with a wet thud. He couldn't move. He couldn't scream. He just wheezed. The zero-pointer crashed into the ground a block away, sending up a final mushroom cloud of dust. Silence returned to the city. One by one, the other students emerged from their hiding spots. They stared at the fallen robot. They stared at the boy lying in a pool of his own blood and green sparks. Did he just destroy the zero-pointer? One punch. He took out a god with one punch. Is he alive? Ida ran forward, his face pale. Medic! We need a medic here! Izuku stared up at the blue sky. The clouds were drifting by peacefully. 0 points, he thought, a tear leaking from his eye. I used everything on the obstacle. I have 0 points. Darkness took him. The infirmary. Ouch. Stay still, you reckless child. Izuku opened his eyes. He was in a bed. Recovery girl was standing over him, looking stern. I've healed the bones, the old woman said, handing him a gummy. But you drained your stamina completely. If I did any more, you'd die of exhaustion. Izuku looked at his arm. It was in a heavy cast. His legs were bandaged tightly. The exam. Izuku croaked. Over. All Might's voice came from the doorway. The hero stepped in. He looked tired. That was quite the display, young Midoriya. I failed, Izuku whispered, staring at the ceiling. I lost track of time. I wasted my charge. I didn't get enough points before the big one showed up. And then I broke myself. All Might walked over to the bed. He didn't smile. You broke yourself to save someone, All Might said. You jumped into the fire when everyone else ran away. That doesn't get me into the hero course, Izuku replied bitterly. The test was about destroying villains. All Might placed a hand on his head. Rest now. We will talk later. The week of silence. The next week was a blur of anxiety. Izuku lay in his room, staring at his All Might posters. He replayed the exam in his head 1,000 times. I should have ignored the 0-pointer. I should have farmed more 1-pointers. I'm stupid. Stupid. Inko tried to cheer him up with Katsudon, but he barely ate. He continued his workouts, lightly, due to the injuries, but his heart wasn't in it. He felt like he had been given a glimpse of heaven, only to be kicked back down to earth. Then, the letter arrived. It was a standard envelope from Yue. Izuku took it to his room. He sat at his desk. He stared at it for an hour. Finally, he ripped it open. A metal disc fell out. Clatter. A hologram projected into the air. I am here. As a projection, All Might's face filled the room. Izuku jumped back. All Might? But this is from Yue. I have come to this town for a reason. All Might shouted. I am going to be a teacher at Yue, Izuku gasped. Young Midoriya. You looked at the exam and saw failure. You saw a score of 0 against the massive robot. But you are wrong. The screen shifted. A video played. It was Uraraka. She was standing in front of President Mike. That boy, the one with the curly hair and the glowing skin? He saved me. He jumped in when I was stuck. I know he didn't get any points for that robot, but can I give him some of mine? Izuku's eyes widened. Heroism is not just about fighting villains. All Might announced. It is about risking your life for others. How can a hero course reject someone who saves lives? The screen changed again. A scorecard appeared. Villain points, 28. Rescue points, 60. This is a job that requires risking your life for lip service. All Might declared. Rescue points are a hidden metric. And you, young Midoriya, aced it. Total, 88 points. The numbers glowed gold. Come, young Midoriya, All Might said, reaching a hand out toward the camera. This is your Hero Academia. Izuku stared at the number. The tears came, hot and fast. He grabbed his chest, where the green light slept, waiting for the next impact. He smiled. I'm in. Class 1A data file. Midoriya Izuku. Quirk. Impact battery. Type emitter. Stats. Power S at max charge. Speed B. Technique C. Intelligence A. Cooperativeness A. The uniform of UA High School was heavy. Not in a literal sense. The gray blazer was made of high quality, breathable fabric, and the teal trousers were perfectly tailored. But as Izuku Midoriya stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the red tie for the 10th time, he felt the weight of it. It was the weight of a century of hero history. It was the weight of All Might's expectations. And perhaps heaviest of all, it was the weight of his own imposter syndrome, slowly eroding under the green sparks of his quirk. Impact battery, he muttered to his reflection. He tapped his cheek. Nothing happened. He was currently at 0% charge. That was the morning routine now. Wake up, stretch, eat a high-protein breakfast, and check the gauge. Unlike his classmates, who woke up with their engines running or their acid secreting, Izuku woke up as a normal human. To be a hero, he needed fuel. He walked out to the small home gym he had set up in the corner of the living room. A heavy punching bag reinforced with duct tape and a thick rubber mat. Mom, I'm heading out. Be careful, Izuku. Don't get hit by a car. Inko called from the kitchen. Actually, getting hit by a car would be a great start to the day, Izuku joked, though he winced when he heard his mother drop a plate. Joking? I'm joking. He stood before the heavy bag. He took a deep breath. He didn't punch the bag. He headbutted it. Thud. A dull ache throbbed in his forehead, but it was immediately followed by a soothing, electric coolness. A faint green vein pulsed on his temple. Charge 2%. He kicked the bag with his shin. Whack. Charge 5%. He spent 5 minutes deliberately bruising himself against the dense sandbag, layering small impacts into his muscles until he felt a low, steady hum beneath his skin. It was like drinking 3 espressos back to back. His vision sharpened. His limbs felt lighter. Charge 15%. That should get me to school, he whispered. He grabbed his yellow backpack and stepped out the door. The world was full of potential energy, and for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya was ready to harvest it. The halls of UA. The structure of UA was intimidating. The hallways were wide enough for a giant, the windows tall enough for a mutant with wings. Izuku navigated the corridors, checking the door numbers. 1A. 1A. He found the door. It was massive, easily 10 feet tall. Here it is. The barrier to the rest of my life. He paused, his hand hovering over the handle. He flashed back to the entrance exam. The girl who floated him, the glasses boy who scolded him. I hope they aren't in my class. Especially the scary one. He slid the door open. Remove your foot from that desk immediately. Ha! Izuku froze. Inside, Tenya Ida, the scary glasses boy, was chopping the air robotically, scolding none other than Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was lounging in his seat, ankles crossed on the desk, looking like he owned the building. It is an insult to the upperclassmen who used this desk, and to the craftsmen who built it. Ida boomed. Like I care, Bakugo sneered. What junior high are you from, you extra? I am from semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida. Semi? A stuck-up elite, huh? Bakugo grinned, tiny explosions popping in his palms. I should blow you to bits just for the fun of it. Blow me to bits? You're awful. Do you really wish to be a hero? Izuku sighed. Of course. They're both here. He tried to sneak in, but the universe had other plans. Oh. It's you! Izuku flinched as the entire class turned to look at him. Ida marched over, his movements stiff and precise. Midoriya! Ida announced. I must apologize. I misjudged you at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue points, while I was blinded by the superficial objective. I hate to admit it, but you are the better student. No, I didn't really figure it out, I just... Izuku waved his hands frantically. Hey! It's the plain-looking boy. Izuku turned to see the brunette girl, Ochako Uraraka, beaming at him. You got in! That punch was amazing. You were like POW and the robot was like boom. She mimed a massive explosion. Oh, thanks. And thank you for saving me from falling, Izuku stammered, his face heating up. He could feel the 15% charge in his body reacting to his heart rate, making his skin tingle. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The three students looked down. A man in a yellow sleeping bag was lying in the doorway like a discarded caterpillar. He unzipped the bag, revealing a tired face, bloodshot eyes, and a mess of black hair. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, standing up and shedding the sleeping bag. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gym uniform. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me on the P grounds. The Quirk assessment test. The P grounds were vast, an open field of dirt and track lines under the blue sky. The air was crisp. Class 1A stood in a cluster, wearing the blue UA tracksuits. Izuku adjusted his sleeves. He noticed people looking at his arms. Even with the long sleeves, the way he moved suggested a density, a stiffness born of constant impact conditioning. A Quirk assessment test? The class shouted in unison. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you're going to be heroes, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa drawled, turning his back to them. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned a cold eye on them. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? Without quirks. He held up a digital device. The country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the average of physical records. It's irrational. Bakugo perked up. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said, tossing him a ball. Anything goes, as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his neck. He glared at the ball. Then, he glared at Izuku. Watch this, Deku. Dai! Boom! The explosion was massive. A blast wave of heat and dust rolled over the class. The ball shot into the stratosphere, leaving a trail of smoke. Die! Izuku muttered. Aizawa held up the device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! That's awesome. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be fun. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop. Fun? He repeated. You have 3 years to become heroes. Will you have an attitude like that during a crisis? He grinned, a terrifying expression that didn't reach his eyes. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. Hiya? The class panicked. That's not fair. Uraraka cried. It's the first day. Natural disasters, massive accidents, villain attacks, calamities that can't be predicted, Aizawa listed. Japan is unfair. Heroes are the ones who overturn those situations. If you wanted to hang out at McDonald's after school, you're in the wrong place. He pointed a finger at them. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. Izuku swallowed hard. His heart hammered against his ribs. Expulsion. He looked at his hands. He was currently at 12% charge. The walk to the field had drained a little. I need to manage my resources, Izuku thought, his mind slipping into analysis mode. I have a limited tank. I can't generate energy, only recycle it. I need to scavenge impacts from the tests themselves to fuel the later ones. He looked at Bakugo. The blonde was staring at him, a predator waiting for the prey to stumble. I can't be last. I won't be. Test 1, 50-meter dash. The students lined up in pairs. First up were Ida and a girl with a frog quirk, Azuri. Ida's engines roared. 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, Azuri commented, hopping across in 5.58 seconds. Uraraka lightened her clothes and ran in 7.15 seconds. Next, Bakugo and Midoriya. Izuku walked to the starting line. Bakugo stood next to him, cracking his knuckles. Don't cry when I leave you in the dust, Deku, Bakugo whispered. Batteries die. Explosions are forever. Izuku ignored him. He looked at the starting block. It was a metal brace bolted into the track. I need a kickstart. On your mark, the robot camera intoned. Izuku raised his leg high. Get set. Slam. Izuku stomped his foot down onto the track with every ounce of his natural strength. The impact jarred his ankle, sending a sharp spike of pain up his shin. Input received. Green sparks flared around his calves. Charge, 20%. Go, BLAM. Bakugo launched himself with explosions behind his back, flying low to the ground. Izuku didn't fly. He sprinted. He channeled the energy from the stomp directly into his fast-twitch muscle fibers. His legs became blurs. He tore up the track, the green lightning leaving scorch marks with every step. Bakugo crossed the line. 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed a heartbeat later. 4.98 seconds. He skidded to a halt, panting. The green light faded from his legs. TCH, Bakugo spat. Slow, but inside Bakugo was screaming. He kept up. Without a mobility quirk, he kept up. Izuku checked his mental gauge. Charge, 10%. I use too much. Running drains it fast. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku held the digital dynamo meter. Next to him, a tall boy with 6 arms, Shoji, squeezed his device. 540 kilograms. Whoa! You're a monster! Izuku looked at the device. He squeezed with his normal strength. The numbers climbed slowly. 40 kilograms. 45 kilograms. The resistance, Izuku realized. The machine pushes back. That's a force. He squeezed harder. The metal handle dug into his palm. It hurt. Pain is power. He focused on the pressure in his hand. He absorbed the kinetic stress of his own grip fighting the machine. It was a feedback loop. Squeeze. Absorb the resistance. Release into the muscle. Squeeze harder. The machine whined. Green sparks danced over his knuckles. Crack. The plastic casing of the handle fractured. 180 kilograms. It wasn't shoji levels, but it was 3 times the average human limit. Aizawa marked his clipboard, watching the green sparks fade. He recycles the stress of the tool itself. Clever. Test 3, standing long jump. This was tricky. Izuku stood at the edge of the sandbox. I need lift. But I can't fly. He looked at the ground. He bent his knees deep. He jumped straight up first, only about 2 feet, and landed hard on his heels. Thud. The shock traveled up his spine. He winced. Absorb. Before the energy could dissipate, he used it to trigger an explosive forward leap. Release. He shot forward like a cannonball, clearing the sandbox entirely and rolling onto the grass beyond. Bakugo watched, his teeth grinding together. He's figuring it out. He's learning the timing. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta, the great boy, was the king of this, bouncing back and forth. Izuku struggled here. The constant shifting of weight required a steady stream of energy, and he couldn't get a good rhythm of impact absorb release. He ended up with an average score, panting heavily, his reserves down to 5%. The main event, ball throw. The sun was high now. The class was getting tired. Midoriya, Aizawa called. You're up. Izuku walked to the circle. He picked up the ball. It felt light. Too light. He looked at the field. Bakugo's 705 meters was the benchmark. Uraraka had gotten infinity, which scared everyone. I'm at 5% charge, Izuku analyzed. That's not enough. If I throw it now, I'll get maybe 60 meters. I'll be in the bottom tier. I need a massive charge. He stood in the circle. He looked at Aizawa. Sensei, Izuku asked. Can I do a warm-up? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Hurry up. Izuku nodded. He placed the ball on the ground. He walked to the edge of the circle. He took a deep breath. Then, he started sprinting. He ran a lap around the circle, building up speed. Then, he turned inward, running directly at the center line. He didn't stop. He threw himself into a shoulder roll, slamming his body against the hard-packed earth. Thud. He stood up, brushed off the dirt, and did it again. Thud. The class watched in confusion. What is he doing? Kaminari whispered. Is he beating himself up? He's charging, Bakugo said, his voice low. He needs pain to work. Izuku did it a third time. He slammed his shoulder into the ground. A bruise was definitely forming. But the glow was back. Charge 40%. It's not 100%, but it'll have to do. He picked up the ball. His arm was vibrating with green energy. The veins stood out, pulsating. He wound up. He planted his foot. He prepared to transfer every ounce of that pain into the ball. All Might said, clench your buttocks and yell smash, SMA. As he swung his arm forward, the power vanished. It didn't fade. It was cut. The green light snuffed out like a candle in a vacuum. The energy he had painfully gathered dissipated instantly into nothingness. His arm swung forward with the strength of a normal, tired boy. The ball flew. 46 meters. It landed with a pathetic plop. What? Izuku gasped. He looked at his hands. My charge! It's gone! He looked around. Aizawa was standing there. His hair was floating, defying gravity. His scarf was hovering around his neck. And his eyes were glowing red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa stated flatly. The class gasped. Erased? Wait, those goggles. He's the erasure hero. Eraserhead. Aizawa stepped into the circle, looming over Izuku. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, his voice dripping with disdain. It was certainly not rational. Even if you have a powerful quirk, if you have to damage yourself to use it, you're a liability. I wasn't damaging myself, Izuku argued, though his voice shook. I was charging. You were throwing your body against the ground, Aizawa snapped. I saw the report. You broke your arm and legs to save one person. If you tried that in a real fight, you'd be a statue after one attack. You can't save anyone if you're unconscious. He leaned in close. You look like All Might with that power. But you don't have his durability. You're a glass cannon. And I hate glass cannons. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. The pressure lifted. I've returned your quirk, Aizawa said, turning away. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku stood there, trembling. He's right. I'm dependent on damage. If I can't take a hit, I can't fight. He looked at his arm. The energy was gone. He had to start from zero. He couldn't run around and tackle the ground again. Aizawa would stop him. I need a source. A big one. Right now. He looked at the ball. He looked at the ground. Think. He remembered the grip test. The resistance. He remembered the 50-meter dash. The stomp. Kinetic chain. He didn't need to tackle the ground. He needed to strike it. Izuku picked up the ball. He stood in the circle. He closed his eyes. A battery can be jump-started. He raised his right foot high, bringing his knee to his chest. One impact. Make it count. He brought his foot down. Hard. Crack. His heel struck the concrete circle. The impact was enough to send a shockwave up his leg. It hurt. It really hurt. But Izuku didn't let the energy go to his leg muscles. He visualized the circuit. From the heel. Up the calf. Through the hip. Twist the torso. Into the shoulder. The green light shot up his body in a spiral. A wave of kinetic force traveling at the speed of thought. As the energy reached his shoulder, he snapped his arm forward. Smash! The ball left his hand. Boom! A sonic boom rippled through the air. The ball vanished into the sky. Izuku stood there, his arm smoking, his finger throbbing. He hadn't broken the arm this time. He had just bruised it. Badly. Aizawa looked at his device. A small smile crept onto his face. He concentrated the impact force into a single point of release. He showed the screen. 702.1 meters. Izuku clenched his fist. He turned to Aizawa, tears of relief pricking his eyes. Sensei. Izuku panted, holding up his trembling, bruised hand. I'm still moving. Aizawa's grin widened slightly. So you are. The rivalry ignites. Silence reigned over the field. Then, a growl broke it. DKU. Bakugo was shaking. His hands were smoking. His eyes were wide with a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. What was that? Bakugo screamed, sprinting toward Izuku. 700 meters? You were a pebble. You were nothing. Explain yourself, you damn nerd. Izuku froze. He was empty. He had used the stomp charge for the throw. Kaken! Bakugo raised his right hand. Explosions crackled. Tell me how you tricked me. He swung. Flip. A white cloth ribbon shot out, wrapping around Bakugo's torso and arms. It pulled tight, binding him instantly. Gah! What the hell is this cloth? It's stiff. It's a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy, Aizawa muttered, holding the other end of the tape. His hair was floating again. Geez, don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. Let me go! Bakugo struggled, but the cloth held firm. We're wasting time, Aizawa said, releasing the tape as Bakugo calmed down, slightly. Prepare for the next event. Bakugo rubbed his arms. He glared at Izuku. This time, it wasn't the glare of a bully looking at a victim. It was the glare of a champion looking at a challenger. We're not done, Bakugo hissed. Izuku straightened his back. He looked at Bakugo. I know, Izuku said softly. The results. The sun was setting. The students gathered around a holographic display. Time for the results, Aizawa said. The total is simply the aggregate of your marks. He pressed a button. The list appeared. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 4. Tenya Ida. 5. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Minoru Mineta. Izuku stared at the number 5. He wasn't first. He wasn't even top 3. But he was 5th. He was ahead of students with speed quirks, strength quirks, and lasers. By the way, Aizawa said, zipped back up in his sleeping bag. I was lying about the expulsion. Huh? It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum potential. What? The class screamed. That was pretty obvious, Momo Yaoyorozu commented, though she looked a bit relieved. Wait, Izuku thought, looking at Aizawa's eyes. He's lying. He totally would have expelled the last place person if they didn't show potential. Aizawa turned to leave. He paused near Izuku. Midoriya. Izuku stood at attention. Yes, sir. Stop hurting yourself to get power, Aizawa murmured. Find a way to charge without breaking. If you can do that, you might actually be dangerous. He shuffled away. The walk home. The day was over. Izuku felt like he had been run over by a truck, which, considering his training, wasn't far off. Midoriya! Ida ran up to him at the gate. 5th place. That is impressive. You have a very tactical application of your power. Hey, wait for me! Uraraka ran up, panting. You guys are fast. Midoriya, that throw was insane. Your finger is all purple though, are you okay? I'm fine, Izuku smiled. Just, empty. Empty? Uraraka tilted her head. My quirk, Izuku explained as they walked toward the station. I'm a battery. I need to get hit back. Right now, I'm at 0%. That sounds painful, Uraraka winced. It is, Izuku admitted. But it's better than being nothing. He looked at his hand. The bruise was already turning yellow, a side effect of the energy accelerating his cell regeneration slightly. I'm here, he whispered to himself. I'm really here. Behind them, hidden in the shadow of the gate, Bakugo watched them leave. Impact battery. Bakugo muttered, recalling the name he heard Aizawa whisper. He looked at his own hand. He sparked a small explosion. So you feed on impact, huh? Bakugo grinned, a savage, toothy expression. Then I'll just have to hit you so hard you overload and pop. I'll blow you past your limit, Deku. He turned and walked the other way. The assessment was over. The real battle was just beginning.